It would take nothing short of rank speculation by the jury to make such a finding. Everything stated in this video is my opinion and my opinion only. And just like everything else in these cases we discuss here on this channel, everything is alleged. We're going to go over the alternate perpetrator information first. This is a 7-page document. Introduction. The state previously moved in limine seeking to preclude defendant from offering or arguing alternative perpetrator evidence without first satisfying the applicable evidentiary standards. In accordance with the court's subsequent order on the motion, defendant filed his offers of proof and evidence in support, identifying 4 individuals as potential alternate perpetrators. The state objects to the presentation of this evidence at trial, arguing it fails to satisfy the standard under State versus Meister. Defendant conceded at oral argument that, at this point, his proffer is not sufficient to pursue an alternate perpetrator theory at the outset of trial, but request latitude in cross-examination of the state's witnesses to try to establish additional evidence to satisfy the Meister standard. This is interesting. So at this point in time, they can't bring the alternate perpetrator evidence into the trial itself, but they want to be able to, I guess, obtain more information towards their alternate perpetrators during the trial as these other witnesses are talking, which is pretty much the exact same thing that they've basically been stating, how they are going to use the state's information against them constantly, you know, to try to prove their point. And, you know, he claims exoneration. So this is basically them sort of keeping to theme, in my opinion, because he's saying the witnesses are going to come up and that's where we want to get more information because we might be able to find what we need to satisfy the Meister standard based on what these people are saying. The court concludes that at this time, defendant's alternate perpetrator proffer is inadmissible under Meister as it is irrelevant and or excluded by IRE 403. However, this does not foreclose defendant from cross-examining law enforcement regarding the reasonableness of its investigation and its follow-up on plausible leads. But can they ask law enforcement specifically about these alternate perpetrators? Or do they have to be vague and stupid about it? Because, like, it'd be super crazy if, like, all of a sudden in the middle of trial, somebody on the stand says something and it's literally like the one piece that the defense needs. And Ann Taylor just screams at the top of her lungs, objection! And, like, everything goes crazy. Like, I can see this playing out just as Hollywood as Steve wants to pretend that it's not. Can they ask specifically, or do they have to be vague? Okay, standard. Trial courts have broad discretion in the admission of evidence at trial. Carlson versus Harris from 2004. The trial court acts within the bounds of its discretion when 1, correctly perceived the issue as one of discretion, 2, acted within the outer boundaries of its discretion, and 3, acted consistently with the legal standards applicable to the specific choices available to it, and 4, reached its decision by the exercise of reason. Those 4 little things we've seen in a lot of these documents here lately when it comes to this stuff. Analysis. The seminal Idaho case on the admissibility of alternative perpetrator evidence is Meister. Prior to Meister, a defendant wishing to present such evidence at trial had to first present proof of connection with the crime, such a train of facts or circumstances as tend clearly to point out someone besides the accused as the guilty party. I will pause and remind you guys, we heard in January from Brett Payne himself in the closed transcripts from January that there was a main suspect, a main lead that they were doing full-on things with, and then they got Bryan Kohberger's name and he got pushed off, he or she, it was a he, got pushed off to the side. Then the 2 pieces of information for the 2 unknown male DNA from the glove and the stair thingy came back, and they still pushed that off to the side just because the Fed said so. That should be a problem. So I don't see how, if the original suspect is part of what was like submitted here, they can claim that there's no proof of connection to the crime whenever they were going so hardcore. Moscow was apparently going so hardcore. I mean, I don't know if it's the same person, but they were like surveilling somebody enough to like get a cigarette to DNA test. So they were doing a lot in the opposite direction of where the FBI ended up pointing them. Like literally, remember, we went through and saw that they were looking like 25 miles in the opposite direction of Pullman. And then they literally just like flipped everything. The timeline switched, the direction of everything switched once they got that call from the feds. There was nothing pointing to Bryan before that. Literally nothing. And I say literally a lot, and some people don't like that, but I literally don't care. Remote acts disconnected and outside of the crime itself cannot be separately proved for such a purpose. Meister clarified that the Idaho rules of evidence, rather than the more erroneous Larson standard. Did I say that word right? Onerous? I don't feel like I said that word right, but we're just going to skip right over that. Onerous. Control alternative perpetrator evidence admissibility. Under these rules, evidence is relevant if it has any tendency to make the existence of any fact that is of the consequence to the determination of the action more probable or less probable than it would be without the evidence. And then the Idaho Rule of Evidence 403 governs the exclusion of relevant evidence and permits a court to exclude evidence if its probative value is substantially outweighed by a danger of unfair prejudice, confusing the issues, misleading the jury, undue delay, wasting time, or needlessly presenting cumulative evidence. Meister further offered the following guidance on applying these rules in determining whether proffered alternative perpetrator evidence is relevant and admissible. If the defendant proffers evidence which merely tends to mislead the jury that another person committed the crime, or the evidence is not relevant because it does not tend to make the defendant's involvement more probable or less probable, then it is within the trial's court discretions to find the evidence inadmissible. Mere inferences that another person could have committed the crime will most likely not be relevant, and if relevant, will still be subject to the limitation provisions of IRE 403. A defendant has no right to present irrelevant evidence, and even if evidence is relevant, it may be excluded in certain cases. Idaho rules of evidence effectively safeguard against the admission of conjectural interferences without the lower courts needing to apply the Larson direct connection doctrine. This is where we start to get into the specifics. Here, the evidence defendant has offered, purporting to establish the 4 individuals as alternate perpetrators, objectively fails to meet the Meister standard. There's a footnote. In addition, the evidence largely consists of inadmissible hearsay. Defendant contends, however, that under Chambers versus Mississippi from 1973, hearsay tending to establish third-party culpability may be admissible. Namely, the evidence is entirely irrelevant. Nothing links these individuals to the homicides or otherwise gives rise to a reasonable inference that they committed the crime. Indeed, it would take nothing short of rank speculation by the jury to make such a finding. I love how right here he gives a second footnote, but then literally all of it is redacted with Sharpie. It looks like they attempted to, but then it didn't work right, I guess. There's some boxes here, but then the Sharpie goes way over. I don't know what they were doing with this, but the footnote's completely irrelevant. We can't read anything. 3 of the individuals were each socially connected to one or more of the victims, interacted with one or more of the victims at social events in the hours prior to the homicide. We'll go back up to that in a second. Wait, was that even part of some of that? Because it's a different... Ooh, is this footnote from up here? The footnote continues on. Okay, you know what? They really need to learn how to not make this so stupid. There's no reason for the footnote to continue down here in the middle of the next paragraph with all this black text in the middle of it. Y'all need to get it together. Okay. 3 of the individuals were each socially connected to one or more of the victims, interacted with one or more of the victims at social events in the hours prior to the homicide, lived within walking distance of the crime scene, and were familiar with the layout of the victim's home from prior social events. Social events doesn't make it really sound like it's Jack decor. That almost sounds more like party instead of relationship, but I guess social could mean that too. Okay, footnote number 3 lets us read it. Okay. The fact that these individuals lived within walking distance to the crime scene is not probative evidence given that the perpetrator drove a vehicle to the crime scene. No! You cannot sit there and say this as a case fact, sir. We have not gotten to trial. Have you forgotten your job as a judge? Are we for real? Further, none of these individuals drove a vehicle matching the description of the suspected killers. So that would automatically take away Jack D, because I'm pretty sure there's like a white car that's similar, pretty damn similar. I wonder if these are the frat guys, because that would be the only like social event that would make sense here. Okay, this is not sponsored, but I just wanted to share this with you guys, because if you love Asian food and ramen, going to this website is the way to go. We order from them all the time. Free tote bag, fast shipping, great options. Click the link in the description box. If this was, what's his last name? Rhymes with Roach. I wonder if that's one of them. While perhaps this evidence could suggest an opportunity to commit the crime, which no doubt is an opportunity shared by dozens of other of the victims' social circles, there is no compelling evidence that any of them had a motive to kill the victims, much less physically harm them, or a means to do so. So the fight and everything that was told to Xana's dad for the reason why her and Ethan were home at midnight, none of that matters. Beautiful. Noted. Pathetic. Further, there is no evidence connecting them to the crime scene. Okay, you know, I'm not even going to entertain that, because I know damn well that that's not the damn truth. Come on now. They have each cooperated with law enforcement, providing DNA samples, fingerprints, and allowing searches as requested. Notably, lab testing has excluded their DNA from samples taken from the crime scene and victims. Okay, so then this would be people that don't have DNA at the scene? See, that makes that even a little bit more strange, because I know damn well that regardless, there would be some of those frat guys' DNA in that house. They were there constantly. So that doesn't even make sense. I don't give a crap about cooperating with law enforcement. Well, plenty of people that are guilty cooperate with law enforcement. But this also doesn't really mean too much regardless, because the defense is claiming that they have an expert that has proof of direct and indirect cleanup during the 8-hour time, meaning that there's some sort of scientific math that was done on whatever chemicals they were found, and however they degraded or whatever stage they were at that determined when certain things were done. So honestly, DNA, fingerprints, and stuff not being there for whatever reason doesn't really mean a lot. The fourth individual did not know the victims, but had a passing connection to one of them while noticing her shopping at a store approximately 5 weeks prior to the homicides. Is that the guy that Kaylee thought was following her at Walmart? Like, I feel like this is probably like the guy. I mean, I don't remember the time that we heard something about that. But this also doesn't really mean a lot, I guess. How would they even know this information? Because if there's nothing, there's no connection whatsoever. Like, how would they even know this person? He followed her briefly out of the exit of the store while considering approaching her to talk. He turned away before even speaking to her. The event was captured on surveillance camera. This individual subsequently cooperated with law enforcement, provided his phone number and a DNA sample. As with the other alleged alternative perpetrators, lab reports excluded his DNA from the samples taken from the crime scene and victims, and there is no evidence connecting him to the crime scene. So I wonder, I guess it was just like surveillance footage that they were going through, probably in the, like the self-authenticating record stuff, and they just like noticed somebody. I don't feel like that would have been the only thing that they would have used for that. Like, if they really were just like, oh, this guy kind of looked at her funny but never said anything to her, I feel like if that's what the defense is trying to use here, then that's stupid, and Ann Taylor is not doing a job worth of shit, because that just made that look like a complete joke. The other ones with connections make more sense. This is like stupid. Unless she's doing it for like a reason to like make a point, because maybe she feels like whatever they've got going with Bryan is just as stupid as what I just told you. He was gonna ask her out on a date and then chickened out and walked away? Come on now. This is either completely sloppy-ass work or done on purpose. Collectively, defendant's proffer with regard to these four individuals fails to give rise to even an inference that they committed the crimes or otherwise make it more or less likely that defendant was the perpetrator. Therefore, it is irrelevant under IRE 401. Defendant has provided no probative, admissible, significant evidence of motive, ill feelings, means, presence at the scene, or any other connection to the crime that could possibly move the ball to the extent it supports an alternate perpetrator theory. This coffee gave me the freaking hiccups. Number 5 footnote says, at the state note, none of the four individuals drives a car that could be mistaken for a Hyundai Elantra. Well, y'all don't even have the car right. What you mean? I want to go over like the mistakes they're trying to tell us that he made. And even the ones that aren't completely confirmed, like the crap that we just heard from Drunk Turkey about whoever he's claiming to have talked to that knows the DDD. Because there's no way. Everything else that's already insane. Then you want me to believe that Bill Thompson's BFF over here literally looked Bryan Kohberger in his whole eyeballs at 4 o'clock in the morning, and he saw her walking up to the house, saw her so clearly that she knows she looked him in the eyes, and then still did something a few minutes later? I'm sorry. That doesn't make sense. The mistakes are piling up already. Like, they were already super stupid. But for real, like, we've read how this person responds to people. I don't feel like he's that dumb. Like, I understand mistakes. One mistake, two mistakes, possibly, like, things like that could be, you know, no other way around it. You slipped up. That many things, plus he's looking somebody in their whole eyeballs right before he goes crazy. Like, I'm sorry. That don't make no sense to me. At best, defendant's offer of proof can give rise to only wild speculation that it is possible any one of these four individuals could have committed the crimes, which is inadequate under Meister. Again, mere inferences that another person could have committed the crime will most likely not be relevant. In other words, it is not sufficient for a defendant to merely offer up unsupported speculation that another person may have committed the crime, which is all the defendant has done here. Even if there was a shred of probative value in the proffered evidence beyond wild speculation, it is excluded by IRE 403. As the 10th Circuit noted regarding alternate perpetrator evidence, it is not sufficient for a defendant merely to offer up unsupported speculation that another person may have done the crime. Such speculative blaming intensifies the grave risk of jury confusion, and it invites the jury to render its findings based on emotion or prejudice. Likewise here, presentation of the proffered alternate perpetrator evidence would pose a great threat of confusing the issues because it would force the state to defend against a nebulous allegation that perhaps these individuals were involved. This foray would lead the jury astray, turning its focus away. Are we Dr. Seuss? From whether defendant, the only person whose actions are on trial, committed the charged crimes. It also presents a threat of unfair prejudice, as it would invite the jury to blame unrepresented persons for a heinous crime when there is not a scintilla of competent evidence connecting them to the crime. Finally, it would do nothing more than waste the precious time of the jury and the court in what is already a scheduled 3-month trial. Nonetheless, why do you need 3 months? What you need 3 months for? If you've got straight up evidence that he's the one, then why are we not one and done in a week? If you've really got the right cards, put them on the table week 1. Let's get this over with. What's the problem? Oh, because you can't. So you need 3 months to make it look good. That's all this is. Stupid. Nonetheless, the court's ruling does not preclude defendant from confronting and cross-examining the state's law enforcement witnesses regarding the thoroughness of the investigation, particularly in following up on and ruling out leads generally, like the main lead before the Fed called. Indeed, the Idaho Court of Appeals recently found in an unpublished opinion that questioning a detective about failing to follow up on other plausible leads was relevant to alternative perpetrator analysis. We agree with Emerson that a relevant line of inquiry would be to question the scope and breadth of the investigation and to explore on cross-examination whether plausible investigative leads about third parties were ignored or overlooked. Both. They know this already. That's what's making me even more mad about what we know is going to happen when it comes to what Payne is going to be made to say and lie about on the stand when it comes to the tip. That wasn't a tip. Because all of this is included in that. Because it all goes back to the feds. This is so stupid. It further stated that this line of questioning may not include inquiries about the investigation of specific third parties absent satisfying Meister. So that's what I was wanting to know. If they could actually use names. Give specifics about who they're asking about. So I guess not. So then it really does nothing. Yeah, they can ask the question about, was there a lead before Bryan? Does anything else come in after Bryan? But when it comes to certain names for all these other things, they can't get any more information. So what good is it? It's just going to lead to appeal information. I don't think it can really do more than that if they can't ask specifics. While evidence challenging the thoroughness and reliability of the investigation might be probative, questioning whether law enforcement investigated specific individuals with no connection to the murder provided no probative evidence. Moreover, with no connection between the evidence and the crime, there is no explanation or justification for the questioning, and it would not help the jury answer the only question in the case. The court will apply these same parameters at trial regarding defendant's cross-examination of law enforcement. He may inquire as to the reasonableness of the investigation, including investigating and ruling out other leads. See, that's my thing. They didn't rule out the lead suspect. They just pushed him off to the side and forgot everything that they had ever learned about him and only tunnel visioned on Bryan. How can they just sit there and ignore that? He is not, however, permitted to question law enforcement about the investigation of any specific individual as a potential alternate perpetrator without first raising the matter with the court outside the jury's presence. So why can't they ask more questions very specifically about the main lead? How dumb. Please do not forget to leave a like on your way out and subscribe to the channel if you are not subscribed already.